This video provides an overview of a model or a tip to use when writing literature reviews in sociology. And I'm creating this primarily for my own students, but other students may find it useful. Often, writing the literature review is the most difficult part of writing a research proposal or a research paper in sociology, probably psychology, social sciences more generally. For students, it's difficult to know what should be included, how to structure a literature review, and although they may be reading journal articles that have literature reviews as a component of it, it's a different beast from reading one to actually trying to prepare one yourself. So I want to talk a little bit about what I have used, what's worked for me, and kind of how I got to that point, and you may find that this is a useful model for you to use as well. So let's talk a little bit about how I got to where I am in terms of how I do my own reviewing of the literature and note-taking to write literature reviews. I started like many students do, where I would read an article and I would make highlights and I would write notes in the margins of the journal article. But I found that that was cumbersome, and then I would try to note something on the front of the article about what it was related to. I even worked for a while to create annotated bibliographies and attached to the front of the journal article. This was when I was in graduate school and in my early career, where I printed every article and read it and marked it up and then stapled something to it with my notes or something like that. And then I moved in some of my more recent research projects to a very elaborate color-coded Post-it note system. And so what you have here is, this is from a book that I published in 2017 on political socialization. And so all these colors stand for sections of a chapter that are going to be looking at how political socialization impacts things like voting or participation or partisanship or knowledge, and then also factors that influence political socialization like family, schools, church, and so on. So I would read the article and I would flag each article at the beginning on the first page with all of the flags that were relevant in terms of the topics for that article. This worked relatively well. I had a giant notebook that flagged everything, but it was also cumbersome, and I did a lot of going back through the article, trying to find the right piece when I was trying to write the literature review or summarize the research. So what I am working towards in more recent research is a slightly different model, but it's similar to this one. So I don't have to go back through the article to every single page, look where my notations and highlights are, or go through that set of notes for an individual article. This was an improvement because I knew which articles to look at again, because I knew how they were flagged in terms of the topic or the theme, and had a sense of the structure of my literature review. So what I want to show next is just an idea of how you might do it a little differently. So this is my suggested method. I have, because I'm a professor, I have a lot of legal pads. And so what I'm working to do now, and what I have been doing more recently, is if I'm working through reading articles on particular topics to prepare the literature review section of a journal article or a book chapter, what I do now is that each legal pad is identified as a theme, some topic, some organizing feature that I'm going to use for that literature review when I put it together. So I have the example of theme A, theme B, and theme C, and each of these are on their own legal pads. And so as I'm reading the articles, I make notations on the legal pads for each theme with the information about the author, the information about the page number that I found the reference on, and then any notes or quotations that I want to take. And so what I now have is everything related to theme A, all the articles that I've read, all the research that I'm looking at that deals with theme A, all of those notes about that are going to be in one place. And the same for theme B and theme C, and so on. So now when I finish reading and reviewing and making notations, then I can work to structure my literature review a little more quickly, because now all that stuff is together. And so the important part of writing a literature review that I focus on when I teach my students is that you need to write a literature review that is integrated. So I don't want article one or author one said this and did this, and author two said this and did this. And so it's essentially like a listing, a summary of different studies. It should be an integrated discussion of what previous research has found and how that's bringing us forward to the current project that we're working on. So essentially, you identify the major themes and topics as you read. And so you may start a few more notebooks or sheets of paper or however you want to organize it, and label each theme, make the notes as you're reading. Use these theme notes to structure your literature review so that when you begin writing, you can start with something like existing research on this topic has focused on theme 1, theme 2, and theme 3, or theme A, theme B, theme C, and then talk about each theme as an integrated piece where multiple studies are being researched or discussed together. I also encourage students, when they're trying to figure out how to write it, to focus on things like similarities and differences in the approaches of different studies and within a theme or topic. So what do these studies have in common? What did they commonly find or commonly identify as an important feature? What did they find that was different? How did their approaches differ? And at least within the field of sociology, when we're doing a literature review, we don't talk a lot about the details of individual studies. So we don't need to talk about, this study was a survey of 350 high school students in the Midwestern region, and the study was done over a period of 6 months, and this is what they found. We really just need to say what the major findings were. So what factors were most important, what variables were significant. That's what we're most interested in putting that literature review together. So this is how this might play out. So you read through your literature, you read through the previous research, you make notes on your different notebooks or however you want to structure that, so that everything about a particular theme or topic or unifying concept that is going to structure your lit review are all together. And then as you move through the literature review, so here's what maybe those notes would look like. And this is completely made up data. These are not real articles. It is a topic that I study, so it was pretty easy to come up with examples of what I might take notes on, but these are not references to actual studies. So this is an example on perceptions of political media bias. And so I have 3 organizing themes. The first one is the amount and types of news media consumed. The second is the political orientation or intensity of political alignment. So how someone views themselves in terms of their political orientation, and then how committed they are to that orientation or that political party. And then the last one is level of political activity, engagement, knowledge of current political issues. So on my first notebook, my first legal pad, I have 4 different studies being referenced. And so as I read, I found that these 4 studies talked about how the amount and types of media consumed affected the perceptions of political media bias. Okay, and so I'm taking notes on the author's name, the year, the page number where I may have found something, and then summarizing what that most important point was. So this study, Smith 2013, found that individuals who consume more news media were more likely to report that they perceived a bias in news content, and so on. So I have all of these, everything about the amount and types of news media consumed, all of those notes are together for all those different articles that I read. And so everything is connected there. The same is true for political orientation. And what you'll see is that the Smith article talked about both of those. And so it's in both notepads, right? It's on both legal pads. So that when I am writing that second section, I also am able to note that Smith, in addition to talking about the amount of media consumed, also talked about the role of political orientation, right? And so those are from 2 separate pieces. So I'll talk about Smith more than once, or I'll reference Smith more than once in my literature review under each theme where his or her work was relevant. And then the same for theme C. So I have 6 different fake articles here, and you can see that they appear multiple times on different legal paths. So this is what this note-taking process would sort of look like, or how it would build. And then this is what might end up as a small section of that resulting literature review. So you use your theme notebooks to begin to write the literature review, and for each theme, you can draft out a section discussing the major findings from the studies that are related to that theme or topic or unifying concept or set of variables or factors or what have you. And then you talk about them together in an integrated way. So this is my sample, maybe what I would write, and in this I'm referencing 3 different studies that all talked about from the theme A, that all talked about the amount and of media consumed. And so I have, a statement might be, findings indicate that there is a positive relationship between news media consumption and perceptions of political media bias. And I'm citing all 3 of the studies because they all found that to be the case in their research. Other factors discussed included education level, which the Ning article included, and type of media consumed, which the Jones article included. Then according to Jones, so now I am talking specifically about one of these additional pieces, perceptions of media bias are highest among older citizens who consume the highest levels of television news. So in addition to consumption being an issue, we also know that education level matters, and we also now know that age may matter because of these studies. And so this is what just this 3 sentences or 4 sentences of what your resulting literature review would look like and how it gets put together, because you've identified those unifying themes and then you can talk about what's similar between them, what's unique about those studies, but all within that particular theme. So I hope that you find this model helpful for constructing a literature review, and that the next time you have to write a literature review or review some existing literature, this may be a model that you can use to make it a little less frustrating or a little less intimidating in the process.